If he'd known how unlike a dream today would be, he might have stayed in his bed.
2023 was a blockbuster for gaming in general. So many genres got terrific entries. And to think, people used to claim that CRPGs were dead. A time we'll be looking back on just like 2006 and think, what the hell was going on at the Game Awards? Thing is, I wouldn't know. I did not play a single game that came out this year. I don't think it's that surprising. My PC is old and my interests lay back in the past. Well, that's not entirely true. I did end up playing Your Only Move is Hustle and The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. Though, for me, Hustle is a single-player fighting game, trying to find all the touch of deaths. And you need to be familiar with Sonic's universe to get the most out of his supposed death. So rather than recapping the hidden gems of 2023, instead, I'm gonna go over the games that I played that I think you might enjoy. If I were to ask you to think of mobile gaming, I doubt your view would be very positive. I mean, what even is this? However, back in the iPad generation when all this was new, the variety and innovation going on was staggering. Some people thought it would be the future of gaming. Even rambling man Yahtzee Croshaw said something to that effect. But with 2023's hindsight, it's clear that the well is truly dry. A few titles did escape to become something glorious, like 2012's The Room or the 2014 fantastic PC Glow Up. The premise of The Room is very simple. Here's a safe. Get it open using some curious logic, like a key stored in one of its legs. Pull the door open and slowly descend into madness as the laws of reality begin to tear. Every chapter has a new intricate lockbox that must be solved inch by inch, revealing every tiny secret it has to offer. If you're worried about moon logic, don't be. While sometimes detached from our world, there is a through line that can easily be followed thanks to the rather ordinary items you end up receiving. But let's say you're well and truly stumped. You have no clue what's happening. The game has a hint system that ranges from, yo, have you checked the side yet? To, hey, I think the answer is with that key you got 5 minutes ago. I always appreciate a tiered hint system. Sometimes all I need is a nudge, not a full-blown shove. What distinguishes this from other puzzle games is the sense of danger? You're alone in a literal room, trying to figure out what happened to the last guy and dissecting every secret of this box. And rather having this mysterious score to push you forward, something akin to Professor Layton, for example. None of that, zero. All you get is ambience. A wood floor creaking off camera, muffled noises of the people next door. A church bell ringing to signal the end of the day. It tricks your imagination into believing someone or something is with you that needs this open. And if you fail, leaving this room might no longer be an option. Unfortunately, your flow will be broken thanks to something you missed from the word go. My biggest criticism with the room is that you need to be very granular with your initial search. Anything that looks odd must be investigated. The only reason I know to look for this wick here and this lens thing over there is that I spent 10 minutes trying to figure it out what I missed the first playthrough. I guess the idea was for the player to think, why do these legs not match the rest of the chest? And maybe the first puzzle was to get you in that mindset. Nonetheless, until you've been pushed into picking through everything with a fine-toothed comb, you will be halted by something, I guarantee it. And I think it's worth pushing through such difficulties as the game does go places. It's short, sweet, and usually goes on sale for a pittance. And if you really enjoyed it, have fun with its several sequels. As to why I ended up playing The Room is rather simple. At the start of the year, I ended up watching Leon Massey's video about combat in video games. He talks about why they tend to have some flavor of conflict with failure states built in thanks to that. It's a good watch. Highly recommend.
If you're playing a game, you're probably in some kind of physical conflict. Not always, mind you. There are plenty of games out there that are great that don't involve throwing hands, with even more not really focusing on it and letting you forget that, oh, this is murder. It's consistent, not a constant.
So after seeing that, I endeavored to play more high-minded games. Titles that would expand my brain even further than it already is, to achieve some sort of transcendent state, high above the petty needs of other gamers. Scores, points, teams, us versus them. Nothing but whispers for such intellectuals. Then Tales of Iron happened. The tone of Tales of Iron is something I quite enjoyed. Not grimdark, as I might have led you to believe, but certainly has its moments of brutality. Our protagonist will auto-execute enemies the moment the health gets to a certain level. Bosses can only be beaten by a finisher. The handiwork of the frogs can be seen wherever they make camp. A world where violence can happen at any moment, whether from invaders or even as sport. But it's not at 100% at all times. Overbearing in sections, yes. It does know how to dial it back, with social areas that slowly recover from the war. Even has some levity thanks to the excellent narration.
Nothing like the feel of an axe smashing through tough wood. Reggie wondered if it would do the same to frog shields. And frog skulls.
Yeah, you're hearing that right. One dog cockle. Mr. Geralt of Riversun himself lends his voice, and it's pitch-perfect casting. Providing serious credence to areas of danger.
Rotting corpses always bring pests. If the grubs get beyond the farm, they'd be everywhere soon.
While being able to add his fantastic sarcastic wit on a dime.
The ranger's best bow was little more than rotten twig and frayed string, but Reggie was grateful that he hadn't been offered the other one.
While the writing is fine, flowery, kind of like a storybook, his delivery saves some lines, and only the way he could have.
The smith was alive, but the key to his freedom was held by Blocky Magoo, merciless leader of the Swamp Slayers. He squatted atop the tower, croaking orders to his clan. The village would soon be a ruin, and the frog spawn would feast on the dead.
Adding to the most violent bedtime story. It's also very pretty, even on my potato settings. The amount of detail on the layers, both foreground and back, combined with the excellent ambient sounds, it's a joy to move from area to area. While the soundtrack is not entirely diegetic, any music the Sounds Rat made will only be heard in towns, and will fade as you leave the safety of its walls. Moving to more creeping pieces that strengthen the ambience. Well, on the negative, the animation is limited. Lots of tweening. Not really a problem until the combat gets involved. While I don't like the genre named Souls-like, we've had action RPGs before, but with save benches and healing carved from some enemies, it might be closer to a Hollow-like. This is a joke. Please do not start calling things Hollow-likes, I beg you. So thanks to that, we got dodge rolls, Estus flasks, light and heavy attacks, no stamina bar though. It forgot to show up that day. It's on the whole a lot more reactive while you figure out the system. Enemies will flash a symbol above their head, indicating that you should shmove or shmarry, opening up a counterattack opportunity. As you get more confident, you can sneak in damage here and there, but it's mostly after they've made some sort of mistake. This is fine for the early game, but as we get harder and harder enemies, they just kinda dive bomb you. It feels like the animations or the rigs are not elaborate enough to add flair to the fast attacks, so we kinda default to butt slams. And while the symbol can indicate what won't work for that type of attack, like trying to block an unblockable is a waste of time, how far they move is something that's just gonna take deaths to figure out. This is somewhat frustrating, though thanks to the checkpoint system, it's easy to get back in there and try again. Apparently the symbols were a post-released addition. I can't imagine playing this game without them. Maybe this says something more about me as a person, but Tales of Iron became a cozy game for me. I would boot it up every night for half an hour until I hit credits, soaking up the vibes of the world, helping my little man Reggie take revenge on the frogs. I just sleep better after cracking a skull or two, that's all. In 2023, I was bit by a platformer bug and came down with a critical case of Mega Mans. This can have some severe side effects if you fail to get it treated. The only way to cure Mega Mans is to sit down and marathon 1 through base, which is what I did for the first time. And that, thankfully, cured my illness. Unfortunately, now I have to watch out for the X virus. It's reported to be very deadly to anyone who's contracted Mega Mans before. Now, if you try to ask me which Mega Man was which, I could only poke at vague memories. Yeah, Mega Man 2 had the saw blades, right? Okay, and 3 had the climb machine? That was 1? Oh right, 3 had the snakes. In 5, the dog became a mech suit? 4 was, like, really good, I remember that one. Wait, 6 was the one with the flight armor? Was that also the one with the Japanese propaganda where Yamato Man beats Nightman? What the hell was 5 then? Going through all the NES games, you can watch the art style slowly evolve bit by literal bit, with both the talent of the pixel artists growing with better and better cartridges, until it hits the SNES and everything just clicks into place with Mega Man 7. The gameplay style was getting a little stale, so having such a drastic visual improvement helped a lot. It was also pretty good throughout. Nitro Man stage can go suck a lime, as well as the last boss being bullshit as they could make it. That's not me making things up. The devs actually said that. So here comes my controversial opinion. I think I have no clue what the general vibe is. Mega Man 8 was my favorite. I know it would be from the moment I hit start and the badly dubbed intro started.
Mega Man, today we finish this!
Hey, Zach! Why must I fight you? We are not enemies!
Shut up!
There's a decent amount of animation in here, and whoever is voicing Dr. Light is struggling.
But I've never seen this type on Earth. I don't know where this energy came from, but you cannot let it fall into Dr. Wowie's hands.
I'm sorry, Dr. Wowie?
You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man. Mega Man. Dr. Wowie energy, Mega Man.
It becomes clear that they went hard on the presentation. It might have seemed dated in 1997 to still have 2D graphics on the PS1. In the here and now though, this shit hasn't aged a day. Even if the penguins haunt me in ways you can't understand. We could have done with a few more layers of parallax, but the animations of Mega Man and the enemies will do. Quick interject while editing. If anyone can rip the full backgrounds from the Frostman stages, you should post it somewhere. This one in particular is too good to be forgotten. I think what I liked most about Mega Man 8 is all the little gameplay changes that added up for me. E-tanks are gone. That would be a whatever change if the store was not also overhauled. Rather than enemies sometimes dropping currency to spend at the shop, usually on lives and E-tanks, causing this prepper mindset for the Wily castles. As someone who usually busted most of the robot masters, getting to the final boss I would start chugging E-tanks just to see credits. Especially after 7 games worth. The bolts instead have been turned into a collectible found in the stages, to be spent on permanent upgrades, which I really liked. Faster slide, cool charge buster effects, there's even an upgrade just to give you your lives back whenever you start a stage. Someone finally noticed players were offering themselves at 0 lives just to give them a chance of learning the stage. Why did this take so long? Mega Man's sub-weapons are given a dedicated button so you can still use the Buster while equipped with one. With stages being split into groups of 4, the latter half can be designed with Mega Man's arsenal in mind, even if that all amounts to remembering that the Lightning Claw exists. I do think having 2 whole gimmick stages in the first batch of Robot Masters was probably a mistake. I got no issues with the shmup portion, and the snowboarding needed an intro before the Wily stages, but I dunno, maybe move it closer to the end so we don't go, oh yeah, this mechanic exists. How does this go again? Oh good lord above, please help me! I'm also quite the sucker for the OST. Aquaman's theme is just so chill. Well, ironically, Frostman's stage is really upbeat, carrying a lot of energy. We're hitting that Y2K liquid jungle period that would come to dominate games OSTs, and honestly, I think it really suits Mega Man. I hope Mega Man 8 gets re-evaluated by people. For it to be the last numbered in the classic series, it sucks that it disappeared for so long until the Inti Creates old school games were made. The Blue Bomber deserves more, coming from a new fan. Outrun 2006 is a game that makes me mad that A, people can't buy this for any modern systems, and B, we're not getting another Outrun anytime soon. Between the late 90s and up to the 2010s, there were so many racing games. Studios would sneeze and oops, an F-Zero or a Gran Turismo fell out. Whatever flavor you wanted, we got it. Kart racer, combat racing, gravity defying, whatever the hell Blast Corps was. All you needed was a good racing model and a few great tracks. We got more stories integrated into them. Context was needed to why we're blowing each other up. I don't blame things like Most Wanted, that game owned. It's just a trend. Along with the ever-increasing fidelity games were expected to have, they just became more and more expensive. Sometimes we still got a MotorStorm or a Project Gotham, but as for now, trying to find something not Mario Kart, Need for Speed, or Forza in the AAA space is hard. The slack has fallen squarely on the indies. So, with all that said, going back to Outrun, a racing game where you drive for 5 minutes, then the game ends, was like a fucking oasis. I'm not kidding, by the way. You choose which Outrun to play, pick a car, decide on a jam, there's too many, it's hard, and you drive for 5 minutes. Get to the finish line and it ends, back to the main menu. There are more single player / structured modes, but those are mostly tutorial and score attacks. And if you play long enough to unlock the longer modes, you can race for a total of 15 minutes. How adventurous. So here's how a typical run works. You start in sunny SoCal, soaking up all the rays and drifting along the beaches. Before you know it, an intersection shows up and here comes the difficulty selection. Left for easy, right for hard. After completing every course, this comes back up. See this little map? That's all the paths available for a single run, meaning that the difficulty is player dependent. Which for me is basically, what am I in the mood for? That also means it is highly replayable, giving you 24 routes across both versions of the map before unlocks are factored in. As for driving, it's pretty damn good. The game was handled by Sumo Digital, who would go on to make the Sonic racing games, and you can feel it. Like a forgotten prototype for things to come. One thing that always stands out in their games is the drifting. While a Ferrari is heftier than a kart, it's no less vital for taking aggressive corners that come as standard for the harder tracks. Throw in a really great sense of speed, traffic to slipstream off of, and some assholes in red cars that you really want to overtake, and it's no wonder Outrun became digital popcorn for me. No matter how much time I had or how I was feeling, I would always come back to it for a quick run again and again. It helps that I'm playing a curated version of Outrun. It has a community version called FTX, added bonus stuff back into the game, cleaning up the visuals, and adding wheel support. I don't have a wheel, but I bet I would appreciate it if I did. And these visuals are to be marveled at. Sure, on a technical level, it looks like an Xbox game, because it technically is. Though the framing and art direction make some of the vistas godlike. Even now, almost 20 years later, Sega Sunshine is always more vibrant compared to everyone else's. It is abandonware, so if you're missing the sun this winter, it comes with a high recommend from me. If there was a game that should have been a slam dunk the first time I booted it up, it would have been The Messenger. The thing about slam dunks though is that they are very visible and loud as fuck. The Messenger on the other hand is a surprise birthday on a random alley the devs hope you walk by. And now that I finished the game, I'm glad I eventually stumbled across it, but good god did it take a few attempts. Multiple times since the game's release I've tried to sit down and play it, with each attempt petering out before its first bombastic reveal. It's not even a surprise if you've seen gameplay of it or checked out the store page. I can't tell you why I struggled to get into it even after that milestone, but I never did. Sometime later, after learning that Sea of Stars, a game I'm excited to get around to at some point, has direct ties to The Messenger, I knew I had to beat it. So emboldened with that knowledge, I got to that point and oh god, is it one thing to see her in the trailers? But to actually see the direct translation to 16-bit in person is something to behold. The presentation in general is beautiful, I don't have to tell you that. The easy thing to say is that it's authentic to games it's paying tribute to. While that's somewhat true, it's more of a nostalgic smeared lens of authenticity. NES games rarely felt this smooth, had this many sprites on screen, was even in widescreen, and they certainly did not have stage elements singing in time with the music. Speaking of the music, it also has a flair that is distinctly not NES. The moment I heard it, I knew it was made with Tracker software, or at least someone who came from that scene. Trackers, for those unaware, is an old style of music creation, closer to programming than a more traditional DAW. It tends to have a more frantic energy to it. Why? I'm not entirely sure. But it ends up with every audio channel firing on all cylinders, and the composer, one Rainbow Dragon Eyes, was absolutely killing it. So that's just the 8-bit, by the way. Let me bring you back to the Genesis! The vibes that each time period brings can differ wildly in the visual department. The devs knew how to emphasize that generation's strengths. Normally, the 16-bit just looks like a faithful translation or what the devs would have done back in the day. But that's not what they always do. The absolute wonder and majesty of the Sky Domain transforms into a daunting trek through stone and thunderstorms. How's the gameplay? It's smooth and responsive. It plays exactly how it looks. Perfectly considered jump arcs, the right amount of speed. If you hit anything with a jump attack, you now have a free double jump. This can be reset practically on an infinite amount of times, so long as you hit something again, leading to this considered paced out platformer turning into a speedrunner's dream the higher your skill level goes. Grab the upgrade that lets you destroy enemy projectiles, and look at that, you've enabled shenanigans. That's only half of what makes it so fun to play. It's also backed up by some finely crafted level design. On the critical path, a few skills are tested, the tension rising and falling throughout rooms, but the closer you look, the more opportunities you have to increase the pace. Random stalactites that seem pointless until you learn the rope dart works on them, turning whole areas into the floor is lava. Though, if I could complain about nitpicks for a second, this game is really good, right? The things I'm about to bring up took form over a whole playthrough, so keep that in mind. We good? Okay. Why is some of these actions shared with menu navigation? The rope dart is on B, so is cancel. I would rather have the rope dart on a shoulder button, but if I do that, the cancel now follows it, and nobody wants that on anything other than a face button. Hell, we have a whole button that has no actions on it, and we can't move glide over to it? I get it, you don't want people storing a second jump easily while having access to the glide on top of it. But it feels like butts trying to glide after recovering from a hit in the air, with all of it being shared on a single button. What else? The wall cling is too sticky sometimes. And just because the game made fun of it doesn't mean that I can't bring it up. You need to be holding a direction to actually stick to something, but with how the air momentum works, it feels a tad overtuned. Would love a button that I could hold to override the wall cling. Maybe put it on the button not being used. Okay, thanks, bye. So I showed you the game's big twist. That's not what got me hooked. After that, there's 2 more twists. One story and one gameplay. Somehow I never had any of these spoiled for myself, which I'm very glad it turned out that way. So I won't bring it up here, just note that if your tastes seem to line up with mine, and you've also struggled to get that far into it, I would recommend trying your best to get to the 16-bit sections. It's also just a funny game. Its sense of humor is so up my alley it hurts. The Messenger is the butt of every joke, and I absolutely adore him. But even past that, the writing is surprisingly good for what looks like a simple game otherwise. The shopkeeper, who's kind of the face of the game, has a lot of stories to share. But the most interesting ones come from the moments you bother her about a certain object. Once, she said that the things they talked about were cheesy. I would say, instead, I never expected a 100% achievement run to turn into self-reflection. Sometimes the dumb, jumpy game can hit you in places you never knew existed. And that's the Messenger for me. A game I'm very glad I played. Thanks for sitting through what was essentially my top 5 games that did not come out this year. I wanted a bigger video to close out the year, but life happens and sometimes you gotta eat those lemons. Honestly, I'm a little humbled to have anyone watching. It's small in the grand scheme of things. I was just making stuff to prove to myself that I could. To finally shut up that little voice in my head that would parrot, I could make something better if I wanted to, over and over. Turns out, I can't. Instead, I've made what I wanted to make, which has been infinitely more fulfilling to me as a person than the need for validation. So, genuinely, thank you for watching anything I make. Next year, I think I'll up the production a little bit. No lofty goals like a video every month, cause that was supposed to be this year, and if you look at the channel, how did that turn out? It'll just end up in more failures. I think just an attempt to have a stronger online presence, and to have more than one project running at the same time. I feel like I can now get away with that. We'll see. We'll all see. You'll see. I'll see. But mostly, I'll see you next year. Bye-bye.